Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I have Lina Abirafeh with me today, and it's all about violence against women in the world. She's the executive director for the Arab Institute. She spent her significant portion of life standing for women, protecting women, and still having a drop in the bucket with women against violence against women in the world. So just so thrilled. Lina, welcome to the show. And just start out by saying thank you because you're incredible. Oh, TED Talk, unbelievable, which will be linked. Let's get into this. Nepal, New Guinea, Afghanistan. 1 in 3 women are subjected to violence globally. It's everywhere.
Correct.
Just tell us with your tremendous experience, which I guess some ways you wish you didn't have to have so much experience in this. Where do we even begin? Where do we unfold? And where do we move forward?
Well, I got into this when I was very young because I realized, as most young girls realize, that the world isn't built on equality. And at a certain point in our childhood, as girls, we realize that we're viewed as less than by society, by culture, by country, by community, by the media, by everyone, really. And the context is one of inequality because of entrenched patriarchy. So we're just so used to being less than and living less than. And I think the most egregious manifestation of that is the continued existence of violence against women. So as long as we're not safe in our own bodies, in our own lives, in our homes or schools or on the street, in the market, in office or in public office, that for me has got to be the critical starting point. So I was a teenager. I was barely 14 when I got started and have been doing that ever since. As you said, I don't want to do this. This is not a job that anybody wants to do, but it's a job that everybody has to do.
So within that, let's get into the, and I was just thinking about this all the way, preparing for this. And I'm like, is it about control? It's power, control, dominance. Is that at the heart of the violence?
Mm-hmm. It's always about power and abuse of power. Correct. The problem is that because women and girls are viewed as less than, it is seen as the right of men to perpetrate abuse, to take advantage, to do whatever it is they want to do. And especially for women who transgress, who decide that they are equal and they were born equal and they have every right to live and be equal. It is often those women who are put in their place, so to speak, by men, by society, by the patriarchy, because the world exists to keep women down in so many ways. And we have to keep fighting harder and longer and stronger to be able to achieve what is rightfully ours by birth. And that's true in every country around the world. There is not a single country that has achieved equality.
So your TED Talk opened up. You were just in the middle on the 3rd floor in the Institute with the women and people you're working with in Nepal. The hurricane started. You guys gathered around a pillar because you guys couldn't get an exit and held and supported and the pole hugged each other. When you said afterwards that crisis, because that's your other background, you go where there's crisis happens, disasters happen, the earth's messes, and you go and stand and then make systems come in for them to get relief or whatever else that looks like, right? Mm-hmm. So within that, there's a parallel. There's a parallel that you had said that after the crisis, when systems are broken down, when our structures are damaged, in societal as well as physical and all of the above, that when that happens, although we would think we would rise to a togetherness, a unity, a place of higher energy, in turn, it's actually just the beginning of more violence with women. Tell us what you've seen.
Well, the reality is that even before an emergency, whether it's a war or a natural disaster, whatever it is, even before that happens, women and girls are already more vulnerable. They are they're more poor, they are less educated, they have less access to healthcare, to economic opportunities, to any kind of safety and security, to leadership and decision making. They are already marginalized and discriminated against actively in every layer of society. Now bring in an emergency, bring in an earthquake like what happened in Nepal or in Haiti, bring in a war like Afghanistan or Congo, bring in whatever it is, even Hurricane Katrina right here in the States, or COVID all around the world. In any kind of emergency where all of these insecurities and vulnerabilities are amplified and everything that was bad before gets so much worse, women and girls bear the brunt of that. And that is unfortunately a universal truth. We've seen that absolutely everywhere. We are living that right now as part of the COVID pandemic, because even a pandemic is not gender neutral. People think, well, everyone's getting sick. It's men and women. Well, that's not true at all. So all of these things, if we don't see the gendered impact, we tend to ignore it and assume that everything is gender neutral, but we don't live in a gender neutral world. And anytime these things happen, those that are already weaker in society become so much more weak.
And so when women are facing violence, women are naturally the ones that children are the ones that they're the caretakers by just how societal as well as just biological. So in turn, the children face violence as well.
Women are the natural caretakers. They're the social safety nets. They are always the ones in every context who know who needs help, where they are, how to help them, what kind of help they need. They bear a disproportionate share of unpaid care, obviously. They tend to work more in the informal economy. They tend to provide more for their families. They work with children, the elderly, the sick. They are the frontline workers in every sense of the word, not just in the way we define it now, in the context of COVID. So they are the ones who are out there repairing all the damage all the time and making sure that societies, communities, and countries don't collapse.
We're the ones that hold it all together.
I absolutely believe it.
Okay, so we're, again, continuing the new normal, right? So we're COVID, right? It's closing. We're entering 2022. COVID, we're still not going to get to see what that ramifications are of being enclosed space for violence against women. Afghanistan, we've just left and created so much vacuum for women that were working alongside. Mm-hmm. What is 2022 going to hold? What are we going to see?
Well, we're not out of any of these messes. We've stretched them. I mean, COVID is nowhere near ending. We're still in the middle of the pandemic. It continues to adapt and to outsmart us in many ways. And making things harder because our energies, our patience has also worn thin, which is becoming more difficult to be able to manage this. A situation like Afghanistan is certainly not going anywhere. There are many protracted crises in the Arab region that I cover through the Institute that are going to continue, that show absolutely no signs of abating. I mean, look at Iraq and Syria and Palestine and Yemen and all of these forgotten conflicts that just continue on and on. Places in Central and West Africa, places like the Central African Republic and Congo, all of those countries continue to experience violence, maybe not constantly, but intermittently, enough to keep people perpetually insecure. And as long as there is that level of insecurity, it is impossible for a society to stabilize. And if it cannot stabilize, it cannot prosper, it cannot thrive. There is nothing sustainable that can be built when we're always teetering on the edge. And so it creates a situation where people are just forced to struggle for survival day to day and exist in that kind of that level of anxiety. And we're doing that here. We're doing that everywhere. So we all know it to a certain extent. But it's not a way to live, and it's not going to bring us a better, more peaceful world, which is one I think that we all deserve and we should all be fighting for.
Okay, there was, I believe it was like 2 weeks after the first round of earthquakes in Haiti. You were walking, and correct me if I have the place right, but you were walking down the street and there was a artwork that still, like magic appeared. That was Nepal. Okay, good.
Yes.
What did it say on the wall?
It said, "Start where you stand." And I thought, what interesting graffiti is that? And I stood in front of it for a few minutes. I don't know how long. I was frozen. My feet stuck to the ground. And I said, that's really it. If there's one thing that I want to say to people, people ask me, and I've said this in not just the TED Talk, but in many talks, people say, well, I want to do something, but I don't want to do it how you did it. I don't want to go to Afghanistan. I don't want to go to Papua New Guinea. I can't, I won't. And that is perfectly fine. I did it in an extreme way. But if you look around in your home, with your family, with your partner, with your peer group, with your school, with your workplace, whatever, there is a lot of work to be done right here all the time. It is around us. It is about the micro gestures that are going to either build or undermine our quest for equality. It is everywhere. And because we know that no country has achieved equality, and because we know that at the present pace, it's going to take us 100 years to close the gender gap. 100 years. I mean, I personally am not going to live that long, I don't think. But I really would like us to speed up. That's not an excuse for us to be slack. I think the only way that we're going to achieve this better and faster is if we all do it together. And that is by supporting each other through it, by calling each other out on whatever crap, by examining our own behaviors and biases and understanding the role that we play. Fixing inequality is not just a women's job. It's not just my job to come in and say, well, here I am, your resident feminist coming to clean up the mess that I didn't create. It is actually everybody's job, because doing this is going to build a foundation for equality, not just for women, but for everyone. And isn't that what we're fighting for? I mean, look at these social justice movements that are demanding it finally. But if we can't achieve it for women, how are we going to achieve it for anyone else? So we have a long road ahead, and I certainly hope we speed up, because 100 years is just, I'm not sticking around for that.
Well, you use the analogy, and I tend to be a visual person. You use the analogy of circles, right? Can you go into that a little bit about what you meant by that and how that applies to people moving forward and working together?
Well, the idea is that we all occupy these little circles, these little spaces in our societies, in our families, in our communities, on our street, in the apartment building where I live. And we are responsible. We are accountable to those people. And we have daily exchanges and dependencies and relationships that either nurture or undermine us in our little circles. So it is our responsibility then to make those better. And I believe that behavior is contagious. So you might as well make it good behavior, So if everyone's going to take charge of their little circle and stop looking out there, over there at other women, focus on what you've got in your circle and take responsibility for that and really start to care and nurture that circle, then everybody might do the same. And that is a gesture that is contagious. What I think is dangerous is a lot of people say, well, violence and war and all that stuff, that's not here. That's not me. That's not now. That's not us. That's not our community, our religion, our cult, whatever. It's other women. It's over there. No, it isn't. It is actually right here. And when I say 1 in 3 women and girls will experience some form of violence in our lifetime, in their lifetime, it is because it's you and me and somebody else. And one of the 3 of us, and every woman has a story. So it is everywhere. So that danger of saying, well, it's not my problem because it's not my people, is naive at best and irresponsible and dangerous at worst. So that's the idea of the circle. Look around your circle and you'll start to see things. And when you see them, you don't ever unsee them. And then you can take some action. And that's where you should start, where you stand.
And this is one of the reasons I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to not only interview you, but get to know you and align with you. And I just want to say, I just acknowledge your courage. And that is, as your energy is out there, that others get to stand in theirs. And I hope you can receive that. So, okay, executive director for the Arab Institute for Women, but there's stuff that's coming up for you in the new year. What are you working on? What's on the agenda for 2022?
Well, I am looking at pivoting a little bit. I probably will start to branch out independently, to do more public speaking, to monetize my speaking, to look at consultancies or advisory support that I can give to maybe corporate clients or others who are interested in advancing women's rights, who have the will to do it and who have the means to do it, but who perhaps don't know how to do it. So I'm the how. Also, things like spending more time on my writing. I've just completed my second book on women in Afghanistan that is slated for publication early next year, and another book in process, hopefully at some point next year, depending on a publisher. So things are moving, and I'm really looking forward to what this new year is going to bring. I feel like it's the right time for it. And it is a good time for all of us to stand up and speak out about these issues. And if we don't, staying silent is not an option.
So within that, then let's talk about the C-suite. Let's talk about those that what you get to bring as they're faltering, and there's still things that are coming up in workplace, in Hollywood, in every industry is coming up, that there is a form of abuse of power. So within that, and yet then I say, okay, we're finally acknowledging that, right? The Me Too, but there's still the how. So say that a CEO is watching this, or the director of training and labor in that whole department there and all. What do you say to them, and also then where you get to bring with them the support they need to shift?
Well, there are two ways of looking at it, really, and I recommend doing both. It's about reforming the internal systems and structures. It's about getting your house in order, as they say, and it's about doing good on the outside, externally. And this is not just a PR exercise. For some, it might start out that way, but there needs to be some genuine will, political will at senior levels, especially, that's going to drive this forward. Corporations have responsibilities to do things that are good and right, and to serve as role models and to demonstrate these kinds of actions. And whether it is for women's rights or for the environment or for whatever other social cause, it doesn't just have to be this one. They need to really put their money where their mouth is. And at the same time, you can't afford to not look internally and examine what is happening within the structure of the institution. Are women represented at senior levels? Do they have a say? Do they have a voice? Are they at the table? Who is present at the table? Who does the speaking? Who does the deciding? And who's left out? And what do we lose by having those certain people left out? So really a critical kind of introspection through HR processes, through the dynamics of senior leadership, whatever it is, some kind of a gender assessment or audit to understand the corporate culture and to be able to bring them to a better level. It's a process. It's not a one-off, but there are ways to do it, and especially to avoid the kinds of scandals that we're hearing about, cases of sexual harassment or sexual exploitation and abuse that are very often brushed under the rug because it's easier to hide them than face them. But they will come out. These stories always, if we've learned one thing, nothing stays hidden forever. And that's an unfortunate truth for everyone. So the more work that organizations do early on, the better off they're going to be. And it's never too late to course correct, even if it's in the middle of a scandal and a big mess. At least do so with the commitment to change and implement those changes. And then at the same time, like I said, the external, the kind of outward facing stuff is really where corporations can push the agenda forward much faster because they've got the resources and they've got the will to do it. And maybe they have access to different types of networks or different communication channels. And it could be really interesting. And it could be a creative partnership to normalize messages around equality and rights and dignity and respect for everyone.
And at the end of the day, the way that we treat women is that's the way we treat everyone.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I mean, there's been ample evidence that shows that any chance a country has of peace or prosperity or progress isn't built on the type of government it has, nor the health of its economy. It is built on how the country treats its women. So if you are a community that abuses, that marginalizes, that discriminates against, that treats women and girls as less than, you will have no chance of success. Everybody loses from that.
So even in a non-altruistic way, you're being detrimental to your society if you mistreat your women.
Absolutely. I mean, the costs to countries of continued violence against women are enormous. The costs to countries of not having female leadership, of keeping women out of the formal economy are huge. I mean, there are dollar figures that we can use to back this up if people need that kind of evidence. But, you know, is it about prosperity, and is it about business, and is it about the bottom line? In part, but it's also about principle. You know, this has got to be because we believe that it's the right thing to do. That's got to be our underlying factor. And all the other benefits should be seen as secondary. They're wonderful, yes, but they are secondary to what is the most important thing. And that is that equality is everybody's right. It is due to everybody, and it is long overdue to everybody.
And it's everyone's responsibility.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Lina, how can people get in touch with you, and what that looks like?
I would encourage people to get in touch with me by Twitter, Instagram, whatever types of social media. If you can spell my last name, you can find me. So it's Lina, Lina Abirafeh, which is Abirafeh. So I have a website, linaabirafeh.com. My Twitter handle and Instagram and also LinkedIn are all the same. I happen to have a very easy to find last name, so you can't possibly miss me.
And I need to say something, that when you do look you up, you're such a fabulous speaker too. So, all right, everybody, Lina Abirafeh, again, we all get to stand. We get to stand together, and we're also responsible to stand.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure having you on, and we will see you soon. That next book's coming out. I want you back.
I would be honored and delighted. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Everything that you're doing. Bye-bye.